Now, mutations, sudden changes in heredity, are passed on. They breed true. The environment selects those occasional mutations which enhance survival.
Evolution by natural selection was the greatest idea anybody ever had.
We are cousins of all living creatures. We have a history of 4 billion years of slow, gradual evolution. Just think about 4 billion years.
Evolution is the basis of modern biology.
If you lined up every ancestor you've ever had, you wouldn't notice the moment they stopped being human. One generation to the next, there is almost no difference. But skip a few thousand steps and you're looking at an ape. Skip a few million and you see a fish. Skip all the way back and you're staring at a lonely, simple organism. Luca, last universal common ancestor. Every plant, every fungus, every dog, every human, every bacterium, and every single life shares some fragment of its genetic code with Luca, making it the grandfather of all life here on Earth today. What you're looking at isn't a fractal chart, it's a map to evolution itself. Every branch tells a story of life diverging, adapting, and surviving across billions of years. And it's one of the most beautiful, mind-bending ideas humans have ever discovered. It's been tested, proven, and explains life better than any other theory in science. Yet, so many people still reject it.
But Darwin's theory's totally that's why it's still a theory almost 200 years later.
100-unit protein coming together by accident this is a very big number. Time and chance make evolution absolutely impossible.
A lot of people accept that life has been around for billions of years, and most of us accept that life changes over time. But they rarely are capable of imagining what billions of years of change actually looks like.
Nobody has ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. Never. You may get a big dog or a little dog, but you're going to get a dog every time. And it could be that the dog, the wolf, and the coyote had a common ancestor. I wouldn't argue about that. They probably did. Here we have a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. Which one is different than the rest of them? The banana. Give him a hand. All right. Very good. We have college professors can't figure that out, okay?
This also explains why most people believe in microevolution but not macroevolution. They accept that species can change over time, but not to the extent that entirely new species could emerge. That's outside of human intuition. Our brains evolved to handle maybe a few decades. And when you can't truly comprehend that timescale, your brain refuses to believe that this could ever become this.
E is equal mc squared.
The problem is, the timescale for all this is so enormous that your brain just shrugs and calls it really long time. And that makes it feel less believable.
Somewhere around 4 billion years ago, a molecule arose which had the unusual property, not totally impossible, but unusual property, of making copies of itself.
Abiogenesis. This is probably the most common reason I have seen that makes people doubt evolution. It is often used as an argument to evolution itself. A lot of people think evolution is supposed to explain how life began in the first place, how the very first single-celled organism appeared. It doesn't. That's abiogenesis, and it's a different theory entirely. Evolution needs a starting point. It explains how life changes over time, not how it originates. Abiogenesis, on the other hand, tries to explain where that starting point comes from. How simple, self-replicating molecules could have formed, and how chemistry could have crossed the line into biology.
The idea was to simulate a primitive ocean atmosphere system. So the liquid water was put in there to represent the early Earth's oceans, and the gases, methane and ammonia, were introduced to represent what they thought was an accurate portrayal of the early Earth's atmosphere. And then the spark represented a lightning discharge, which is a form of energy that was probably very common on the early Earth. Well, what we found is something very exciting. We found that not only can you form amino acids, which is something that Miller had shown in his 1953 work, but by introducing this external molecule called cyanamide, you can cause these amino acids to link together and form larger compounds called peptides. And in the order of the evolution of organic chemicals, you have a progression from amino acids to peptides and ultimately to things like proteins. It's ultimately about the origins of life, and this is a process along that pathway, is trying to understand how chemicals evolved on the early Earth to ultimately give rise to the first forms of organisms on the Earth.
There are two types of people, those who believe in evolution and those who do not understand it.
So not only have I become skeptical of Darwin, but you can readily see the design in life.
Evolution also explains how complex organs and systems emerge over time. For example, the eye. The eye is so complex and every detail seems so perfectly in place that it's even often used as an argument against evolution, and people just credit intelligent design.
Creationists are particularly fond of the eye because they like saying, what is the use of half an eye? An eye only works, they say, if every little detail is in place. Until you've got that, the eye won't see anything at all, so how could it possibly have evolved? Well, suppose we start with an ancestor who didn't really have an eye at all, but just a single, simple sheet of light-sensitive cells. So this animal, with hardly any eye at all, will at least be able to tell the difference between light and dark. The next stage in evolution would be to have a shallow cup. This animal would be able to tell the direction that light is coming from, because a shadow would appear. Now, although we've represented this as a cup coming out from the wall, it would in fact probably be an indentation, and it would be a gradual indentation. Its shadow effect that we've just been witnessing would work progressively and gradually as the cup gets bigger. And this cup is even more effective. And if we go on to the next stage where we make the cup gradually bigger again, so big that it becomes just a little hole in the end, right now, this animal has a very good idea of exactly where the light is, and by the same token, exactly where, for example, a predator is. And I think with this eye, we might even get a little image. See if we can get an image of Bryson's hand. That smudge there is Bryson's hand, and you can just about see a very dim image of his fingers.
You keep passing on successful genes over millions or even billions of years, you eventually get something that looks very much like a divine creation. Like an eye that can detect depth, distinguish color, and perceive light in detail. But it's far easier and much more flattering to believe we are the product of divine creation than to accept that we share ancestors with apes. But it shouldn't be discouraging. You should stand proud. You belong to the most powerful species this planet has ever known, and perhaps even this universe. A species that split the atom, mapped the stars, and left footprints on the moon.
Patria o muerte.
Isn't it ironic that this only a theory actually stems from the non-arrogance of science? Because scientists are careful enough and cautious enough to say that everything they know is only a theory, which is just awaiting disproof. Yet that humility comes back and bites us in the form of the criticism, evolution is only a theory, which implies that it is in doubt.